Hello, and everybody. Welcome to another episode of our weekly ZEISS Micro Minutes sessions. My name is Michael Kempen, and I'm an electron microscope applications engineer here at the ZEISS Microscopy Center in Dublin, California. I'll be your host today in today's session, which will be about the automated large area scanning electron microscope imaging. Before I begin, I just want to make a note that everybody on the opposite end here on the YouTube channel will be muted. But if you had any questions along the way, please post them in the Q&A chat that you see on the YouTube channel. Another thing I wanted to note quickly is there's an upcoming schedule for, there's a couple of that you can be viewed. I'll quickly toggle back to here and let you do that for a couple seconds. So there's high resolution, some of insulating samples that will be coming up, and some additional. And you can access those all on our website, and I'll show those at the end of the session as well, where you can access that information. So as I mentioned today, we'll be going through the automated setting up and acquisition and then stitching of the tiles for how you do automated imaging on the SEM today. So I'm going to switch now to start here. So one thing I just want to make a note of is that a few weeks ago we did show one of these sessions, and it demonstrated the use of our ZenConnect product, which allows correlation between the light microscope and electron microscope imaging, so that you can identify where your areas are at the macro scale and the LM images, and then identify and zoom in on them with the electron microscope. So because that's a critical step, I wanted to go back through that first in the workflow. So I'm going to show that first. I'm going to go ahead and go through this. So at this point, I've opened up the ZenConnect workbench, and it has all the workbenches on the far left here along the left tab. It's in the acquisition workbench. I have it set up on our 𝗶HI 𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀 scanning electron microscope. And this particular sample I have in here is a fractured neodymium magnet that's been demagnetized. And the nice thing about this is that it handles different KVs and different currents really well and behaves nicely. So it demonstrates nicely what we're trying to show today. So what I'm doing is showing live imaging. You can change your magnification. You can change your field of view. You can change other settings from within here. All in the Zen Core EM, and I'm just kind of pointing out here where you can access those. That in the middle, access brightness, contrast. Everything can still be accessed and changed down through the hand panel that you have as part of your 𝗶HI SEM. So at the top, you can see where we have the different dwell time. You can have the line integration. You can have frame integration. You can choose whatever field of view you want, things like that. So that's just a brief overview of where you start. You get your imaging conditions. Now I'm going to show here, I'm going to move on to the ZenConnect workbench. And like I said, that this is a really good way of identifying where you need to go based upon you pull in the light microscope images on top of other images that are taken with the electron microscope, and then they're all within correlative workspace. So what I have here, I have some SEM images that are in here as well as the light microscope images, and all of them are shown on the ribbon that's to the far right, which is the gallery of images. You can zoom in, click and zoom in on them. You can adjust different parameters, the brightness, contrast, gamma on each and every individual image if you like to do that as you're getting the images set up. There's two different, you can have different detectors and different images and view and overlay to an extent within here. But for the most part, these are individual images that you're going through and looking at to begin with. So I have everything set up. And I'll go through quickly on this, the Zen Connect, the alignment, how I did the alignment. As I mentioned, that you start with having the LM images pulled in on top of the EM images, which you acquire immediately after you get into the Zen Core EM workbench. And this shows that you can, if you pull them in, and if there's ZEISS CZI images, they are scaled properly, and all you need to do is translate and rotate typically. If they are an image that is non-ZEISS, like your cell phone camera or some other camera or a different microscope, you can still pull them in, but they're going to need to be scaled as well. Just to demonstrate what we're going to do here, though, is to pull in a ZEISS LM image, and all of the LM images are correlated to each other. So they're scaled and they're placed with respect to each other. And I'm just moving around all of them all at once on top of the SEM image, and I'm identifying the shape here at the bottom. It's like the bottom of Africa, the African continent here, trying to line it up at the bottom, and then I'll put a pin down there because I can tell that it needs to be rotated. So I'm going to rotate here. Everything's scaled correctly. You just need to rotate and getting it generally close, and then I'll zoom in. I'll do a little bit more the fine-tuning once I get it closer here. So I'm translating it once again, just pinning it, getting it a little bit closer, overlay. All right, so after the alignment, we can zoom in. You can make the images opaque or transparent, and that helps with identifying on the overlay. If I zoom in on this one on the upper right corner, do the same thing. Gonna make sure they're overlaid correctly. They look like they're just fine. Same thing at the upper left. So all of them at the upper left, upper right, and bottom are overlaid properly, and the SEM images are overlaid on top of the LM images typically, so the optical images are underneath. So everything is set up. We can drive around on any of those images. So at this point, I'm entering the Zen Core EM protocol-based acquisition. So what you want to do to set up an acquisition for the mosaics or large area imaging is first figure out what sort of tile size do you want and what sort of resolution do you want in each of the tiles. So and that's what is called a protocol. So it's attached to what you're going to do. It tells the SM exactly how many tiles and how much resolution and what the field of view and everything. So we set it up, we pull in a protocol, and then we can test it here in this workbench and say, okay, let's check the imaging parameters, the dwell time, the line integration, whether it's frame integrated, set the brightness contrast up, and then just test it. And it has two modes. So within the protocol itself, as I mentioned, you can have a different name. You can tell it how many different line integration, what sort of pixel size, and if you want any sort of focusing, automated stigmation to be done, whether you want that to be done every tile or every row. You have quite a bit of flexibility. And once you can either change these or you can modify the parameters and then click OK to save them. And once you do that, then it pulls in over here. So now you have the option of viewing it either in the pixel size or as the full frame field of view, which will be the full tile size. And then we see on our image of the magnet quite a lot of topographical features, which is good. I'm using the secondary electron SE2 channel, the Everhart Thornley. It picks up topography incredibly well. So right now I'm switching to the pixel size because I want to see brightness contrast, changing it with the hand panel right now. But if I wanted to, I could also change it from within here. I'm changing, just kind of checking out and seeing if we wanted to do that. We're going to stick with the single pixel at this point. If we wanted to do line integration or frame integration, this is where you'd set that up as well. And this is where, like I said, you can do the full field of view, or you can do the pixel size. The pixel size shows you as the actual size of the pixel it would be. It's zoomed in quite a bit, and it does not have the full field of view, whereas if I switch it to the full protocol, we can see, I'm going to zoom out here, that it's quite a bit larger. And if I do a single scan, this is what each tile is going to look like during the acquisition when I use this particular protocol, which has 200 micron with 200 nanometer, 20 nanometer, excuse me, resolution. So everything's looking good here. If I wanted to take an image with the protocol, I can. So it's kind of useful where if you wanted within ZenCore EM to take individual images with a specific protocol and set it up, you can, and then it dumps the image out here, and then it becomes part of what you have within Zen, that you can either save individual images or the project itself. And of course, each of these are being added onto the correlative workbench, so we'll do that, show that later once we have a bit more. All right, so at this point, we're going to decide what regions, where we want to acquire. So I'm going to move just into the center of the sample. There's a red cross here that indicates where we're at. If we were to double click, then it would move to a different site. We can move around anywhere within the field of view. You could even move outside of the field of view, and the stage would move there and acquire images. You just wouldn't have an LM image to correlate with, but you can certainly do that. Right now, I'm going to zoom in with my scroll wheel and then draw a rectangle. So right now, if you notice that I'm drawing the rectangle, it's hard to tell, but there's a green box here. And it says region 6, and it has 4x3 tiles. So it knows there's going to be 12 tiles, given the fact that I've selected that specific protocol that we just created. If I make it larger or smaller, then it'll tell me that it'll be more or less tiles. And if I change the protocol, then it would tell me what how many tiles it needed for the new protocol that I wanted to. So you'd basically go up here, you'd import a different protocol, and then you can modify the parameters that way. I can go in and select the protocol, and like I said, we're just going to stick with what we have there, but that's where you would select it. And let's say that we want to acquire something, a different shape. We'll do a circle. You could also do a trapezoid also, but this one we're going to do a different. We don't want it to be at quite as high of a resolution, so we're going to set that up where this rectangle has more tiles that are higher resolution, and then the circle has the lower resolution. And so you can set up as many of these as you want. You can attach each of them to have a different protocol, which gives them different fields of view and resolutions compared to one another. And like I said, you can check each and every one of them, which we'll do going forward. So this is just setting them up, drawing, and now I'm going to select them. So I'm selecting them here to indicate that I want to go ahead and acquire both of them. You can choose to acquire each individually for if you didn't want to acquire them at the same time. And I'm going to move to the check regions. So this just gives you an opportunity to check the imaging conditions. I'm going to tell it to move to that particular region. And then it's going to tell it to start on the live imaging. There's brightness, contrast, there's imaging conditions. This is where you'd set up if you wanted to do line averaging and change your dwell time, things like that. If you were to change that, then you would have to tell it to attach the new parameters, and it would overwrite that. So just to give you an idea, taking a live image here, that everything still looks good. I'm going to adjust the contrast a little bit up and down just to show it's a live image. Changing it to the pixel size, like I said, this particular, it shows the actual size of the image that you're going to get at the pixel level for each tile. Everything looks good, but if it weren't, this is your opportunity to change it and to attach different parameters to it for each one of the regions. So I've decided that the first one looks good, and I told it it's fine, and you have green dots that appeared. Moved on to the second region, it physically moved there, and do the same thing. You just check the field of view and the pixel of the resolution and everything looks good. If we needed to, we could attach the parameters to it if we had changed them. And now everything, both of these are green. So they're ready to go. They've been checked and all the parameters that we need for imaging are okay. So at this point, I'm going to go into the actual automated acquisition part of it. So we're back in the correlative view. It's moved back up here, and I've told it to start the acquisition. So it starts here. You notice that this one's the square. It's in the process of acquiring it. It does have the ability where you can pause it if you wanted to. It has a live preview, which is what we're seeing now, but it also has it where as it's dumping these in, it'll add another tile and another tile until it completes the mosaic. So what it's doing is individual image here. If I move over to here, then it's going to dump that there. If we go back to the image, then it keeps doing the imaging. And as it's imaging, we could go on to here, and we could zoom in and out if we wanted to and take a look at the, while it's acquiring. It doesn't care. As long as the image information is there, we can take a look at it. So this one was the one that's taken 12 tiles, and it's something out of 12 right now. It's about a third of the way through. And it just runs automatically. And it puts these with respect to each other for now. They're not going to be perfectly overlaid because there's going to be some inaccuracy in the stage movement, and that's when we'll get to the stitching after it's fully acquired. But for now, it just runs. This particular one took about 15 minutes to acquire, and I've sped up. I'm using a video right now to show this because otherwise it would take too long for the time allotted for this. But if we are finishing up on this, it's about 2/3 of the way through here. All right, so let's see it dump in the, it's going a little bit slower right now. I'm just taking it as we go in the last couple of tiles. It's completed 10 out of the 12 tiles. 2 more to go here at this point. Like I said, you can zoom in, you can take a look at the tiles, even though it's still actively acquiring the tiles. This will be the last of the tiles, and then it'll move on to the next region after this. Like I mentioned before, that this is all automated. This is, so you could set it up, run it sometimes. So we moved on to this circle. Depending upon how much resolution and how big of an area you need, some of these can take hours, and that's why you'd want to set them up in advance and have it do the auto-focusing and auto-stigmation by itself, and then just runs however long it needs to run to acquire all the images and data that you need. This one's only going to have 4 tiles because that I did a lower resolution, and it's a smaller region anyway. There's some variety into showing that you can use different protocols and acquisitions for different regions. And we're on the last tile here that it's acquiring. All right, so it's finished. You can tell there's a little bit of a mismatch, like maybe in the brightness contrast between different tiles, and you can adjust that later. I'll go through that. For now, we're more concerned with getting them stitched. So all the new data and all the old data is in this data tree. So every single image, every single region is in the data tree. If I go back to the correlative viewer, we now have a circle here, and we have the rectangle here that we see that are added on to the other images that we'd already had in there. If I zoom in, You see those, and it just names them region 6 and region 7. I can name them if I wanted to, if I had a specific thing about the region that I needed to know. So at this point, we need to do stitching. So we need to make sure that all the different tiles are overlaid properly with one another. Then I can choose to do this on one or both of the different. So I'm going to start with the circle. Circle's easiest. It only has 4 different tiles. Get into the interactive sticking workbench, and then it throws me into showing me where the intersections between the tiles are. And there's 4 of them. It lists them in the data tree, and they're red because nothing's been done with them yet. If we want to go ahead and have it try it itself to see how well it stitches, then we could just do start. Yeah, we can definitely see that there's a shift between the different tiles on that, and it needs to be fixed. So I'm going to click this button here. It's going to go through and it'll calculate, and the blue ones are good. The red one is maybe, maybe not. We probably need to check that manually. It's flagged it as red for some reason. Let's just verify. So you can start a manual review. It'll bring up the tiles. I clicked on that particular intersection. It looks good to me. I'm not quite sure why it's complaining, but if I physically move it around, one of the tiles it colors red, one is the turquoise color, and the intersection between them is the grayscale. So if you move it close to and draw a box, it allows you to draw a box. And as long as you're close and the 2 features that are within each image are the same, then it can snap to them. So I'm going to click on it, and it snapped right there. So now they're fully aligned. And now it changed to green. So you notice it changed back to green, and it mentioned that I manually corrected it so that it would identify whether it was me versus it that had stitched it. Do the same thing here. There's a feature here that lends itself to aligning, just to double check. It looks good there. You can keep doing OK next, or you can go ahead and skip it. I mean, there's only 4 tiles here, so may as well go ahead and manually go through it. But they look good. The automated stitching is incredibly good, especially when you have features that are this crisp and this distinct. All right, so there's the alignment between all of the tiles of the circle here. Just give me a moment to finish this last one here. So that one's good, and I'll just click apply to apply it all, is what I'm going to do. This was double checking this one to see. I thought I saw maybe there was some mismatch or something here, but I think I probably had it correct, but there's a little better feature that's down a little bit that it may be easier for it to identify and to correlate between the 2. I'm going to zoom in. It's down in this area here. Get these 2 on top of each other and tell it to snap to that. All right, I said it applied them all. It's indicating they're green, and it looks good. I'm just zooming in and out using the scroll wheel. And let's see, let's move on to checking it out. This is what it looks like back in the image itself. Looks good. You don't see any of the stitching artifacts. So we need to do it for the other one as well, the rectangle. And that one will have given a good example of what needs to be done on the larger region. So I go back to here in the stitching, and there it is. So this one has all the different red that are indicating all the different intersections between the different tiles. I'm going to go ahead and have it attempt to do stitching on its own. And it should do well. Like I said, it's got plenty of good features, good contrast, and so far so good. Everything is in blue is good. If it were to have problems, it would isolate it as a red or a yellow. So there's one of them here that's still red in the lower left. So we'll have to deal with that and see why that it decided that it wanted to do it as red. Maybe there's a small amount of mismatch. Maybe it just didn't have as accurate as what it needs to. We did notice that in the list here, where the green dots are, that there's the confidence of the match and how well that it correlated. So I'm going to just do it manually real quick just to double check. But I think this is probably the only tile that really needed it, and it looked like it was close. So it changed it now to where it indicated I manually stitched that. And I'm not going to go through them all. You could go through them all, but you can see where it does a good job on, and if you had hundreds or thousands of tiles that you needed to do this on, you'd certainly want to do it automated, and it does a good job on automation, and it does a good job of flagging. And even if it flagged a few here and there that were not good, then you can manually go drive to them and fix them yourself. All right, so didn't take too long to do that. You can see where you set it up, you do the acquisition, you go in to stitch it. Doesn't take that long. Everything's looking good here. And okay, so I mentioned before that if there were some mismatch in the shading of the brightness, contrast, or gamma on the boundaries between the different tiles, that we can adjust that. You can adjust it either in the X or the Y direction or radially. You have a different settings here that you can adjust that all. You can adjust them for each individual tile if you want. You'd have to click in the top. You can tell, like right now, you can see where the upper left tile is definitely accentuated, which would not be good. And where it had it to begin with actually worked out quite well. So you really don't have to do much here. But if you had a mismatch, you could adjust it. So it's rather nice to level them out. It doesn't take that much to go through and just kind of see if there's a different setting that you could use to make those boundaries disappear to the eye. And normally, like I said, that it does a good job on doing it itself, so I don't usually have to come in here and do anything with this, but it is an option, and then you would just apply it. You do the same thing. At this point, we have the two different mosaics that we did, plus all the different images that we had done before. So we've got everything overlaid on our Zen Connect workspace. We can toggle each and every one of these on and off. We can zoom in on them. We can look at them. We know where the regions were acquired with respect to each other. So that's a key thing to note here, where you know where they were in the LM image, and you know where the EM images ended up, and you know that the mosaics ended up in the middle there, that were somewhere in the middle of the sample. So if you had a specific feature or region that you wanted to target, you can easily target that. If we zoom in here, we see that there's the two different mosaics that are here. You can toggle them on and off to see what was behind it. A lot higher resolution, of course, in the tiled mosaics than there were in the original image. So that's it. That's pretty much all. It's as easy as that. You go through your different setup. You go through Zen Connect to begin with. You go into your Zen Automated Imaging. You get your protocol set up that you might. You can create several protocols based upon what sort of field of view, what your resolution you want, what the tile size, what the total size of each of the mosaics you want to be. Each one of the tiles, by the way, you can export as an individual image. They're very, very large. This one, I think that was the rectangle, is somewhere in the neighborhood like 14,000 pixels in the X direction. So it's got a lot of pixels. You can downsample that, or you could then do each individual image within that is also saved you can access those as well. All right, so that brings us to the end. Like I said, it's an effective tool for capturing different regions within your sample at different resolutions, different fields of view that are critical, and knowing where they're placed with respect to each other. And let's see, so that brings us to the end of today's session. If there's any questions, let me bring up and see if there's anything that we might have. But this is the where you can find information about the upcoming workshops here. The QR codes will take you to our ZMCC Microscopy website, and then you can find the different portal videos that we have that are webinar type, and then different stream videos that are upcoming, and workshops. We have paid workshops that are key to keeping your skills up or learning new things. We have those available as well. So they're all on our website. So take a look at those. And with that, I'll let everyone, let's see, I'll look through here. Breskin is asking, is ZenCore a direct replacement for Atlas? ZenCore does most of what Atlas does. So yes, in a way, Atlas just has finer control on some things that are more complicated, but for like 90% of what you might need, ZEISS has shifted to ZenCore EM, including the ZenConnect and the Zen automated imaging. So the automated imaging is what's equivalent to Atlas 5. So you're correct on that. Let's see, what are the pros or cons? ZenCore EM is actually quite a bit cheaper because it runs directly on our SEM, and it doesn't need the extra scan generator that the Atlas does. So that's one big thing. The con is that Atlas, like I said, has a lot of functionality built in, especially within the autofocus, autostig routines, and things that are super complicated. Like if you had a lot of different really complicated things you might want to do, we still guide people towards Atlas. And if you wanted to have just like I said, other complicated things that there's some limitations within the ZenCore EM, but they're becoming less and less. I mean, Atlas and ZenCore EM are very similar for what most users are going to do. The exporting of the multi-layer images into a single entity, yeah, you can do that. You would tell it to export it all as you're viewing it within the correlator viewer within ZenConnect. What you would do is you would toggle on or off what you don't want to view, and then you'd save out the view at that point. So you can hide or show as much as you want to show. Let's see, another question was how to deal with the loss of autofocus, autostig, and mosaic. It usually doesn't happen, but there is within the Zen software as well as Atlas that you have the ability to set the range that it's looking for the autofocus and autostig ranges. So if it's within a tight range of, say, it's within 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter, then it should work fine. If you're outside of that range, that's where Atlas tends to excel a little bit better than ZenCore EM, but they both, like I said, for 90% of the stuff, the ZenCore EM is going to work, and you just go in and within the protocol, there's settings that tell it to do the focus range, and you can change the range of the focus at which it's looking. And let's see, the video for lamella prep, I don't know if we still have that up, but I'll check back with you on that, and I'll post it back on the chat. I need to see where that ended up. Anyway, hopefully that answers your questions. You guys, if you have any more questions, just put more. You can either shoot us a direct email. My name is Michael Campen, so just michael.campen@zeiss.com, or you can post any more Q&A that you want in the chat, and I'll try to check it in the next few days. All right, thank you for attending, and that's all.